Alrighty, y'all. Let's try this again. We should be live here. We had a little bit of technical difficulties getting going on the initial launch. Let's keep on trying here. How's everybody doing? Happy Monday, everybody. Still having some technical difficulties. What is happening here? Might just have to go without it. But what's going on, everybody? We're back. Little bit of a solo live, a little bit different than usual. Normally I've got Lucas and Cam with me, but both just did not want the smoke in the drafts tonight. So I figured I would still join and still go live and mock draft with all of you and go over fantasy football as we get closer and closer to the start of fantasy drafts. Yeah, we're going to be drafting over on Underdog Fantasy. If you want to participate with me, you can just use the code fellas. And we will be doing a Best Ball Mania 5 contest here shortly. We're just going to give it a couple more minutes. How's everybody doing? Maddie, what's up? What's good, buddy? Good to see you. Good to see you again. Golly, shoot, man, Twitter is having a tough time this evening trying to get going. That is quite unfortunate. We're gonna do some live tech work here as we give it a couple more minutes. How's everybody doing? Drop all of your fantasy questions, drop all of your fantasy comments, all your thoughts, all your draft questions, all that stuff. We're here to chat fantasy tonight. Love the new channel. Thank you very much. And for those of you that are watching, if you are not subscribed to our new channel, Fantasy Football Fellas, that's where you get our hour-long podcast episodes where you get all of our takes just fledged out a little bit more. You get our shorts over on our Fantasy Football Fellas Shorts channel, 60-second videos. But on our podcast, we get to go a lot more in depth. You get a lot more from each of us as well, because there are two other guys. So at most, you get about 9 to 12 players an episode with a lot more discussion. It is definitely worth subscribing to. So again, make sure that you are subscribed. The Fantasy Football Fellas, and that is where you will get our long form content. So I appreciate the shout out for the new channel. Should I draft Nick Chubb in a later round? See, this is a question that I've been getting a lot recently from a lot of different people. And I think it depends on what we are defining as later round. And the best way that I've described it is if I'm in a position where, I've really stocked up on my wide receivers. I've got my quarterback and tight end. Like, my team is pretty much set. And I can take Nick Chubb as my running back 4 on my team, my running back 5, depending on how many people are in my league. I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but at the same time, he's not someone that I am targeting, that I am really, crossing my fingers saying I hope I get Nick Chubb, just because for a guy of his age with the tread on his tires coming back from this series of a knee injury, the odds are that it takes him a while to at least kind of get back to some kind of form that we had seen him before the injury. And just being older again, it might take a little bit longer. So again, I don't necessarily target him, but because it is Nick Chubb, who is one of the more dynamic and elite rushers in the league, maybe there's a chance he hits the ground running a little bit quicker than everyone expects, which is certainly possible. But I would bet on the side of depth, as in like one of your last like position players on your team. Otherwise, like I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way for Nick Chubb. Alrighty, y'all. Looks like Twitter is just not going to happen tonight, which stinks. I don't know what to do. This is usually where Lucas can step on in and be like, "Hey, I got this for you," and that's just not going to happen. So how about this? For those of you that are live, we are going to be jumping into a Best Ball Mania 5 contest here. I'm going to start to enter so we can all hopefully try to draft together. Giving it about 10 more seconds here, and then I will start to enter. And we're gonna build out a team that, based on our draft guide, by the way, which I will shamelessly plug right away too. We have a 2024 draft guide with over 250 players statted out and projected and ranked from all three of us. So you not only get to see each of our individual stats and what we project them to have, but you also get the consensus ranking, which is just a very easy way to see where we have these guys ranked for the year. So we will be drafting off of our draft guide here. So we will hop right on into a Best Ball Mania 5 contest. And we are waiting for 11 more people. So again, this is a wide open draft room. Come join me if you want to draft along. Sean, ask Amon Ra or Jay Jettis. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong pick here with that 4th overall pick, as you asked. Personally, my leaning is Justin Jefferson. I know that there's a lot of other people, though, that do prefer the consistency or the safety, you could say, of Amon Ra, week in, week out. So personally, my rankings would say it's Justin Jefferson. But I don't think there's necessarily a wrong pick between Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson. All right, as our draft room is now full, let's see what pick we get. We get the 104. I love the 104. I do not have the worst luck when it comes to these drafts. I'm usually the 110, 111, 112. That feels like where I've been drafting the most from this year. Every now and then I get lucky and I get the 106. This might be the highest draft that I've got, at least on a live stream with you all. So this will be pretty exciting. For those of you that are tuning in right now, first of all, appreciate you. Hope your Monday went well, but also let me know in the comments who you would target at the 104 this year. Would you target one of these wide receivers? Would you go for a Bijan? Would you go for a Breece Hall? Would you go for do you go down a ways for a guy like AJ Brown at all? And it looks like we got Twitter live now. Sweet. We love to see that. Deem Dollar Prods, it's productions, I should say. Is Montgomery pick in the 3rd too high? I would say just a little bit, just because you can get a guy like David Montgomery 6th round, 7th round, maybe even 5th round. Like I think immediately of Raheem Mostert. That would be my kind of guy here. Now we are on the clock. Top 3 went off the board as expected. I think I'm going to do the fellas a little bit of a solid here. I know that they like Justin Jefferson. I'm going to follow ADP and just go Jamar Chase. We're just going to try a little bit of a different build. So Mulligan Golf, who should I pick at 4? I really feel like it's between like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. There's arguments then for Bijan Robinson, arguments for Breece Hall. I would say it's still between Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Either one of those guys at the 104 feels like the most correct pick, in the 1st round there. So, let's see here. Let's pull up the big board just to see who goes off the board right away in this draft. Looks like pretty chalk so far. Yeah, Garrett Wilson at the 9th. We've been seeing him start to kind of climb up boards a little bit. Just because, once you get to that AJ Brown, Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson range, people have really been starting to come on up on Garrett Wilson, who used to be going kind of literally at pick 12, like the end of the 1st round. He has now kind of worked his way up close to a top 10 spot. Sean asks, I have Lamar and CJ as my 1 and 2 QB. Should I trade CJ for a receiver or running back and take Jaden Daniels? To be completely honest, I would say you don't necessarily need to have a second quarterback unless your league is a 2 quarterback league. So if so, I think then, yeah, you should be trying to get a quarterback in return, right? With a guy like CJ Stroud, you should be getting a Jaden Daniels, which would be a very nice, piece to target because you're not having to pay as much for his rushing upside as you would for a guy like Kyler Murray or Anthony Richardson or somebody like that. But if it's a just one quarterback league, right, where you're only playing one quarterback, I don't think you necessarily have to go try to get another quarterback in return. I think Lamar as your one quarterback is a-okay. I know that there's something to be said for depth and stuff too, but I think what should come first is the caliber of wide receiver or running back that you can get in return, and then you figure out your depth piece instead of trying to check both boxes at the same time, if that makes sense. I think you try to just get the best player available at running back and receiver first, and then you figure out the second quarterback later. Maddie asks, what's your honest opinion about Jonathan Brooks? Personally, for me, I'm not all the way in on Jonathan Brooks. That being said, though, it was only 3 weeks ago, right before before the report dropped that he was going to, be back in week 3 or 4, that he was going, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Zamir White territory. He was going as a low end running back 2, and now he's fallen to the running back 27. So I think the price tag on Jonathan Brooks makes a lot more sense. That being said, though, I'm not necessarily sold that Jonathan Brooks just comes back and immediately takes over the entirety of that Carolina backfield. I think it'll be kind of a process that kind of slowly works its way over to Jonathan Brooks. So when I have to choose between Panthers running backs, I'm much more in favor of going for a guy for Chuba Hubbard. So as we're on the clock here, we got Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Adams. Looking for week 17, Cincinnati plays Denver. Nothing really working for us there. And we're going to go Jalen Waddle here. Jalen Waddle has picked up a lot of steam over the last couple of weeks just because he's got contingent upside, but in this Miami offense, right, in the decision was ultimately between Olave and Jalen Waddle. Probably just a bet on the better offense between the two, to be completely honest. Even though Olave is going to be a volume play, at least to my estimations, but Jalen Waddle, though, is going to still have a sizable workload in that Miami offense that's going to maybe not put up as many yards and points as they did last year, but still outproduce the New Orleans Saints. True Shiesty, yo, what's going on? Good to see you. Is it Vita boys? Saquon or Taylor redraft 12-man non-PPR. For me, that's a Jonathan Taylor one, just because touchdowns matter more. As we're on the clock here again, for me, this is one of the easiest picks of any draft that I'm in on best ball. We're gonna go Kyren Williams. I know Devontae Smith. I know wide receivers hold more value in best ball, right? We could have gone 3 receivers right off the rip, but for Kyren Williams, for a guy that could very well be, another top 5 running back going in the 3rd round, that's value that you can't really beat in that range. So back to this, though, between Saquon and Jonathan Taylor in a 12-man non-PPR is Jonathan Taylor, just because I think he's got more end zone upside, red zone upside than Saquon does. Saquon might be a little more involved in his offense, right, in the receiving game. But he does have, I think maybe the best way to say it is that Eagles team has better caliber weapons when they get closer to the goal line, right? With Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and AJ Brown versus the Colts, who have Michael Pittman, A.D. Mitchell, who's a rookie, so he'll take a little while to get going. Josh Downs is going to miss the first week or 2 of the season, and then who knows how healthy he'll be. And then you're looking at like Kylan Granson and Jelani Wood. So for me, it's a Jonathan Taylor there. Who should I take at the 106? So based on the best ball, it's the receivers, right off the rip, right? So Jefferson, Amon-Ra, St. Brown. Personally, though, if it's your home league, I'm very much looking at Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson at that point, just because I think the value for running backs with their kind of upside, their path to volume, production in that sense, unmatched. You can't really get that in the later rounds. So, or in rounds after that, I should say. So for the 106, that's who I'm looking at, Bryce and Bijan. But if both of them are gone, then I know that I'm scooping a value in the wide receivers that are there also. So as we take a look at the board here, nothing too shocking so far. Maybe Sam Laporta going middle of the third round. His ADP is probably closer to the end of the fourth round. But I don't necessarily mind it, especially when you go Deebo Samuel. You're going week 17 there, with Detroit and San Francisco. So as we get to that 3-4 turn, Isaiah Pacheco into the third round. Sometimes he slips into the beginning of the fourth round. Yeah, nothing really too surprising so far as we now await our fourth round pick. Shout out to all 26 of you at this current moment. 18 of you on our YouTube Shorts channel, 5 of you on Facebook, 2 of you on our new Fellas podcast channel. If you are not subscribed to our podcast channel, I highly recommend that you do so, because we are doing a draft guide giveaway over there for the remainder of the summer. All you got to do is just go find our latest video, make sure that you are subscribed, comment on the video, just whatever your thoughts. If you want to just say what's up, that works. And then you are entered into the giveaway. So that's over on our new channel, Fantasy Football Fellas. It should be in the description, at least on YouTube. In the description on the YouTube live that you're watching on. So yeah, make sure that you are subscribed to the new channel over there. Shane says Jamar at the 106. I think Jamar is there at the 106. That makes a ton of sense. I think I would still put the running backs above those guys, but that would be my preference. All right, as we are on the clock here, do we want to go Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson for a little Baltimore stack, or are we going to go with Trey McBride and Kyren Williams? And I think we're going to go with Trey McBride. I like the Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack, but I think it's just a little risky, especially when you're in a draft of people that you don't know. And there's a little bit of ways until, you got to pick again. So we're going to go with the Trey McBride pick there, right? You get a little Rams, Arizona correlation then in week 17. You're getting the elite tight end, which I know Lucas has talked, a lot about that when it comes to his drafts this year. He is walking away with at least an elite tight end just because they have been going so much later than what we've usually had to pay for these guys. I mean, last year you were spending a middle of the first round pick on Travis Kelce, and now he's going at the end of the third round, beginning of the fourth round, even though Kelce was still the tight end one in fantasy points per game. So the values on tight ends have just dropped a bit, and there is a clear tier 1, tier 2, and then I'll call it a tier 2B, and then it just falls right off a cliff in terms of production and value there. So grabbing our elite tight end, now we can just kind of let the board come to us and see where we can go from there. Let's see here. Terry went off the board. James Cook went off the board. Who knows? We might have actually been able to get that Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack. I guess we'll never know. It looks like Mahomes has been falling down the board just a little bit. But I think the pick here for me is going to be Calvin Ridley. Grabbing another wide receiver in an offense in Tennessee that is going to be throwing the ball a lot, right? With Brian Callahan coming over from Cincinnati. That's what they were known for in Cincinnati, was throwing the ball. So it's not a pretty pick. It's not one that you get super excited for, but Calvin Ridley does figure to be heavily utilized in that passing attack. And with DeAndre Hopkins, who knows if he misses 1 or 2 weeks of the regular season, that's then an extra opportunity for Calvin Ridley to just kind of establish himself as the one in that Tennessee offense. So now that gives us 3 wide receivers off the start. We're going Jamar. So we went Jamar and Waddle, and we got Kyren and then Trey McBride to give us our week 17 kind of correlation build, if you would say, and then Calvin Ridley as our wide receiver 3. And so now at this point, we just start looking for values and trying to just build out the team the best that we can, but also looking to maybe bring in, draft more Cardinals, more Rams. I went through all of my team exposures on Underdog, which is a very, very cool feature that they have where it keeps track of all the players that you have drafted, how often you've drafted them, and you can export that data. And I looked and I saw that the five highest exposed offenses that I have this year, number one is the LA Rams. And I'm very, very excited about that just because um this Rams offense is going to be really good this year. They're going to be really, really, really good. Uh, the given, what is your favorite draft spot to pick from? I would say it's really probably the 5 or 6 spot this year, just because you're in a good spot to kind of scoop up whatever value comes your way in the later rounds, but you're also able to get really good elite players first, second, and even in the third round. So I would say it's the 5 or 6 spot for me, but I think generally it's a early half of of your draft, 1 through 6, I think is probably the most optimal, most ideal for me, specifically the 5 and 6. Freddie Fred says Rashad White seems to be dropping. Can't see. Is he still available? He should still be available. There he is. He's right there. Um, he has dropped a little bit just because I think people aren't necessarily sure if he can repeat the amount of touches that he had last year, right? I mean, we take a look at his stats from last year. He had 270 carries, he had 60 receptions. He was pushing 204 or 340 touches, excuse me. That being said, though, yeah, they brought in Bucky Irving, but is Bucky Irving really going to make that much of a dent in that kind of workload? So I don't mind the value in where Rashad White goes in drafts this year, but I will be completely transparent and I'll say when it comes to any of these running backs, it's Kenneth Walker that I'm actually the one that I'm targeting. Um, just because the talk and the noise coming out of Seattle for Kenneth Walker being, the 3 down back, the workhorse back is almost too loud to ignore. So that's where I lean. But I do not see anything wrong with the Rashad White in what this is like the late 6th round. So as we are one pick away from being on the clock, we're gonna go with one more wide receiver here. We're gonna go. I'm trying to think. He's gonna be injured. Roma Dunze, Chicago. We don't really have anything there. Green Bay. We don't really have anything there. Seattle. Nothing really. We're gonna go. We're gonna go JSN. We're gonna go a little bit different here. JSN is probably one of my favorite middle round picks of drafts this year. Just because, gosh darn it, this Seattle offense is going to be in a much more pass friendly offense. I think JSN has an opportunity to get on the field more often this year. So I'm a big fan of JSN. Maybe he doesn't, give you your 14, 15 point weeks right out the gate, but maybe he does towards the end of the season after he kind of establishes himself as the wide receiver too. Freddie said Hollywood. I wish I saw that in time, but the injury for Hollywood does scare me off just enough to pass up on him. But at some point there, a player just falls too low because people are too worried about the injury. So you have to scoop up the value there. And I don't necessarily blame him going, at the end of the 6th round there. Shoot. All right. So Rashad and Ken Walker went off the board. We could go one more running back, and I think that's the way I'm leaning here. I like Alvin Kamara. I like Christian Watson, but we're kind of set on our wide receiver. So I'm going to go with James Conner here. Again, kind of building up the Rams Cardinals stack here, right? We got Kyron, we got James Conner, we got Trey McBride. We definitely missed out. Holy smokes. How early did Kyler Murray go? Wow. At the end of the 5th round. Holy cow. How many picks ahead of ADP was that? That is nutso. Oh my Lanza. 14 picks. I mean, I kind of get it. I mean, I guess since you've got Marvin Harrison, I guess. But man, oh man, like that is, I guess that's the only time that you're going to be able to get him because I think if Kyler was available for me, I would have taken him. So I guess I kind of understand it, but Ian said that Trey Benson will be the starter by week 10. You do run that risk with James Conner. There's no denying that James Conner hits an injury in week 8 or whatever, and Trey Benson then takes on the workload and he impresses enough. Like it's almost kind of like a David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs situation. And actually, that's probably the perfect analogy for it. Say it. And maybe I should have taken Burrow there instead, just because I do have Jamar Chase because now he's off the board. But which he went to the same team that has Kyler Murray. What is happening? I guess you got Higgins, but man, okay, that stinks. Anyway, it very much feels like David Montgomery, Trey McBride, but not Trey McBride, but in Jahmyr Gibbs situation where you know that James Conner is going to get at least early down goal line work if he stays healthy throughout the entirety of the season. But I think the difference is that Trey Benson is just not of the caliber of a Jahmyr Gibbs. So there, again, there is still the chance that Trey Benson takes over, like you said, Ian, in week 10, or maybe at worst, all that they do is just split the backfield and James Conner still gets the goal line work in that offense. Freddie said, just pick up Benson too. I like the strategy of having the backfield of a team that will perform. I don't mind it either. But at the same time, I don't necessarily, target it. I don't go out of my way for it. As we are coming up on the clock here, I'm quarterbacks are kind of going off the board quick. And there really is one quarterback that really kind of answers the bell here. It's Jaden Daniels. Just because, we're looking at like a Tua, Geno Smith. So I think we're going to go Jaden Daniels just because I do like to grab a quarterback that does have some rushing upside. Even like my highest, the quarterback that I've taken the most in my personal drafts on Underdog is Anthony Richardson. He's my QB, the quarterback I've drafted the most just because of his rushing upside. So a guy like Jaden Daniels, even though you may not necessarily fit into the build of this squad, perfectly, I'm okay then drafting a Tua and a Geno Smith later that may not have the rushing upside, but I can still get it, still keep the stack alive with those quarterbacks while still getting rushing production. So, as we're, coming up on the turn here, this board could fall in a very nice way for us, but it could also really hurt us depending on who goes off the board. Let's see here. There's a couple of guys that I wouldn't mind. I know Raheem Mostert, just touchdown. We have Jalen Waddle. So there's Miami correlation in that team then. Curtis Samuel, I don't mind. I was kind of hoping for Najee just because that's a value at that point. Curtis Samuel, I don't mind, but I think the pick that we're actually going to go with is Raheem Mostert, just because, again, we have then that Miami correlation with Jalen Waddle. And it's a value too on Mostert, for, a guy that's supposed to be going at pick 92. We got him at pick 100 with his, for a guy that's, again, not going to go away in this Miami offense. He may not be the 1A. He may be more complimentary or 1B, but he's still going to have a role in this offense and his contingent upside too, that if something were to happen to Devon Achane, we know exactly what kind of player Raheem Mostert can be. So I do not mind going with Raheem Mostert there in the 10th round. Now we just got to figure out what we want to do on the come around then, because, so far with this team, right, we've got our quarterback in Jaden Daniels. we could probably lock in Tua as a pick that we got to make at the, in the next round, probably again, because we want to finish off the Miami correlation, Miami stack. We could target some wide receivers, right? If we're looking for week 17 stuff, we're looking at Rams and Cardinals. There's no Rams or Cardinals really around here that's worth reaching for or taking. Do we find a Denver wide receiver? There really isn't one. Do we go for a Chicago receiver, which there are not, because they all go in the top 40. So I think if we're going wide receiver, we're probably just going to go with the best one available. We could continue to build a depth at running back, right? We do. Kyron Williams and Raheem Mostert both on week 6 buys, so we probably want one more that can play when week 6 comes around, and there are still some decent running backs available. So we have a lot of different options, but I think the for sure thing that we need to do is grab Tua, which we may have to unfortunately take him, in the 10th round. I would prefer to wait until the 11th round, but that might be what we just have to do. Pear Champ asks, how do you feel about getting Dak at 5th, 6th round and Ferguson in the 8th, 9th round? I don't mind it. But at the same time, the 5th, 6th round is kind of a steep price for Dak, but I say that more so because I like Jake Ferguson for where he goes in drafts. So if you are able to grab Dak and Jake Ferguson and create that kind of stack, I'm not opposed to it, but I also am not, again, like going out of my way for, to make that stack happen, if that makes sense. Just because I have not seen the upside that a like Mahomes, Travis Kelce stack would have with Dak and Jake Ferguson. So, and as you guys saw, we went with Tua there to grab our quarterback 2, right? Just to finish off that Miami stack that we had just started on. And now as we come around, Trey Benson's there, so we could, make sure that we got the Arizona backfield on lock. We can do Devin Singletary, who it's not exciting, but never mind. There he goes. I think just a little not so fun pick, but you know what? We might actually we probably should be going wide receiver here just before, just to give us some more depth. And there's one player that I believe is there, is up to the task that can answer that. That's Jalen Polk. We don't need him to play right away, but when he comes around in the second half of the season, he is then ready to go. We'll go with Jalen Polk there. A little bit of a NFC, or not NFC, AFC East stack, you could say, with Miami and then New England as well. Freddie said, I'm an AI engineer, created a Bayesian network that integrates weather into the model. I've won my league 3 years in a row, but so much luck involved. Yeah, I mean, no one wants to admit it, but sometimes you do need a little bit of luck on your side. How much do you think about outdoor games late in the season when drafting? Not much, to be completely honest. And I think it's more so, it's something to contemplate when you get to the halfway point in your season, right? When your trade deadline may be approaching, or, you've got to make a decision, are we going to push for playoffs to have a shot at the championship? Are we going to, are we just going to stick with what we got and see if they can somehow turn around? Or are we, just going to accept the loss that we may not, at least as long as we're not finishing in last place, right? So when I'm drafting, right, outdoor games late in the season, I don't really consider that at all, just because there's no way that I can accurately predict, what what the weather in December and January is going to be like. But it's something then that I think about towards the, middle half of the season, right? Trade deadlines and all that, making sure that I'm, like I think a thing that I will be trying to do come trade deadline time in my home leagues, I will be targeting Detroit Lions players, which will be tough because they will be one of the high scoring offenses in the league. So odds are you're not going to get a Jahmyr Gibbs, you're not going to get an Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're probably not going to get a Sam Laporta, but you might be able to get a David Montgomery. Um, let's say Jameson Williams emerges as that wide receiver too. You might have a shot at him. You have a shot at Jared Goff, just because they are going to be playing indoors a lot more. So back to your question, Freddie, it's not something that I'm actively searching and targeting or keeping in mind in my drafts, but it's something then that I'm paying attention to come trade deadline time, right? And it may not even be weather necessarily, but is this team that's playing at home late in the season doing well at home? If they're not even playing well to begin with, um, at home, that also could just add some context to making that kind of decision. So let's see here. We are now in the 12th round. We've got our two quarterbacks and Jane Daniels and Tua. We've got three running backs. Probably need to start building out some more depth at the position players, right? I don't think we necessarily need to force a tight end pick. But finding a running back that does not have a week 6, week 11 bye week, we'll just start adding some running backs that I will be looking for. Jaleel McLaughlin is one of my favorite later round tight ends to be looking at. Zach Charbonnet, just a flyer on him. Jerome Ford. Yeah, I talked about Kenneth Walker earlier, but you still can take a shot on Zach Charbonnet, right? Where it's not like he's going to be completely off the field, but you're not asking him to contribute as much, as a depth piece, excuse me. Who would you be who would be the best handcuff running back duo? Kyron and Blake Corum, Zach Moss, Chase Brown, any other combos you are looking at or recommend? Personally, as we are on the clock here, we're gonna go a little gross here. We're gonna go J.K. Dobbins. Backfield won't be entirely his, but he will still contribute some this year. I think everyone talks about him and Gus Edwards kind of being the 1-2 punch in that backfield. Back to the question though. I think, yeah, Kyron and Blake Corum makes sense. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet is another one. Tyler Algier, Bijan. It's really the handcuff situations where the handcuff is going so much later in drafts, but also understanding that they may have some standalone value as well. So a guy like Tyler Algier might get you 8-9 carries a game. You're not going to be playing him, but at least he's going to be getting on the field. Chuba Hubbard is another one. But at the same time, like when you're targeting handcuffs, you want to target the handcuffs that are on the good offenses, right? So Blake Corum, prime example. Tyler Algier, another one. Like those are the kind of handcuffs that you want to be targeting. Freddie, thanks. Where I lost your comment. Where is it? Thanks for David. Big fan. Thank you. Appreciate that. There it is. I found it. Alrighty. We're gonna go one more running back here. We can find wide receiver values. I like Josh Downs. I know that he's falling in drafts. Julian McLaughlin, though, just to fill out the running back room. And I think, honestly, we can go without running back for the rest of the draft, to be completely honest. So we'll need to look for wide receivers and tight ends. Maybe we take a shot or, take a flyer on a third quarterback. Like the one that makes sense, I think, in certain scenarios is Geno Smith, right? Just because we have Jackson Smith and Jigba. We might do, a Will Levis, even since we have Calvin Ridley. Daniel Jones might just have some standalone value just as a guy with rushing upside, rushing ability. Doesn't necessarily fit into our team by any means, but at the same time, like points are points, and you're just trying to score the most points. We could look for a New England quarterback. I'm not the biggest fan of Drake May just because I I'm I'm not scared. I'm not scared by like how bad things could be, even though that is a real part of Drake May. But we still don't even know if like he's going to be starting week 1, right? So that's something that that pushes me away from Drake May. So those will probably be the 3 quarterbacks. We still got a little ways to go before we're on the clock again. So we can probably start looking for some more wide receivers. Demarcus Robinson fits that Arizona LA Rams build, and I think he should be available for us there. We could go with a Wandale. If we're going to go with Daniel Jones, we could look for Wandale. Some people are coming up on Jalen Tolbert just because who knows what CeeDee Lamb is going to do in this holdout. So you never know. Maybe he holds out for 3 games, and that's just 3 games of Jalen Tolbert, seeing increased snap shares and all those kind of things. So I think those are a very solid list. I think tight ends, my guy Kobe Parkinson, like we obviously have to target him just because he fits the build. And I just like the value. I like getting a piece of that Rams offense in this late portions of the draft. Juwan Johnson's another one, just open targets, vacated targets in an offense that I figure will be throwing the ball quite a bit just because they won't be winning many games. They'll be playing from behind. So Geno Smith just went off the board, which is fine. Weren't, not terribly mad about that. Ian, what are your thoughts on Ladd McConkey versus Josh Palmer? I think Josh Palmer figures to be on the field a little bit more often than Ladd. That's not to say that Ladd won't see the field at all. I think that Ladd will get the easier targets though, because I think he will be playing more in the slot more often than Josh Palmer. But I think for where both go in drafts, I don't think there's necessarily a problem with them. I definitely would prefer. I would say I definitely prefer Josh Palmer just because he does go later, and I think there's at least a chance that they can have similar numbers by season's end. But I am a big fan of Ladd the player. He was one of my favorite wide receivers. So again, I don't mind going with Ladd there, but I would prefer Josh Palmer as we're coming up on the clock here. We missed out on Demarcus Robinson. That stinks. That's okay though. Wandale's there, and I think that's the receiver that we're probably going to be going with here, just because we can pair that up with a Daniel Jones later. So we're going to go with Wandale. Wandale's also very kind of a sneaky later round wide receiver if you're looking for just deep sleepers. Wandale finished with double digits in 3 of his last 5 games last year, I believe it was. Something there. Yes, they have Malik Neighbors, but somebody's got to play on the field with Malik Neighbors. So I don't mind Wandale where he goes in drafts this year. Would you rather try to stack on a certain team's receivers like the Bills, Green Bay, Chiefs, Rams? Also, who's your favorite receiver from those teams per draft cost? I think it's a wise strategy to stack quarterback and receivers, quarterbacks and pass catchers on the better offenses. So sneaky one here, Isaiah Likely. Yeah. I don't know what it is about Isaiah Likely this year, but maybe there's an increased role just because they did not really bring in anyone else on that team. It would have been tough if Levis was available, but he's not. We're going to go Isaiah Likely here. We're going to go Isaiah Likely, a little bit out of the box on this one, but again, back to this question. Stacking quarterbacks and pass catchers on the better offenses is always the wiser strategy to go. Bills Josh Allen, Curtis Samuel is a really easy one to do. Green Bay, Jordan Love, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Chiefs with Mahomes, Rasheed Rice, Rams, Stafford, and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. So yes, would you rather try to stack on certain teams' receivers? Yes, I definitely would. It's really just the teams that you think will, be the more producing or the better producing offenses. Who's your favorite receiver from those teams per draft cost? Maybe the best way to explain it is if you're looking for the stack, one of the easiest stacks to obtain this year is AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts. As you can see here, AJ Brown went at the 110. Jalen Hurts went at the 403. You were getting a top 7 wide receiver and a guy that can finish as the quarterback 1 overall. I think that's a really easy stack to obtain. But in terms of favorite receivers from those teams, on draft cost, as we kind of take a look at the board, someone right off the top for me is T. Higgins, even though he's not super exciting. This is the lowest that he's been going in drafts, and he's still got Joe Burrow in what is going to be a pass-friendly offense still. So that's one for sure for me. Calvin Ridley, Tennessee's offense may not be the most high scoring. So if you want, that one might be a quote unquote easier to attain just because no one's going to be actively targeting a Titan stack. But that means you kind of do lock yourself into a Will Levis situation as well. Christian Watson, Jordan Love, that's a really easy one. Curtis Samuel, Jordan Love. So Curtis Samuel, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, even. I think those would be my favorite wide receivers, on those teams that you can easily stack with a very solid quarterback in drafts as well. Let's see here. Lost my pick. Here we go. Okay, so now we're coming back around. So we are kind of crossing our fingers here that no one takes our quarterback, which I don't think is going to happen because we have a team with 8 running backs, 1 tight end, and 1 quarterback. So that would really, really stink if we get sniped on dimes because I want that. So I guess we will be targeting Drake May. Gosh, that is. Yep. Now it's officially time to sweat. What are your thoughts on Kyler Murray and Tyreek Hill for Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Patrick Mahomes? Who wins that? In redraft, I think the Kyler Tyreek one is hard to, say that side didn't win because you were getting a top 3 wide receiver and you're getting a quarterback with top 5 upside. Now Mahomes does too, but Kyler's got the rushing upside. Mahomes, he's got to do it with his arm, and we've seen him do it before. You just feel a little more assured with Kyler Murray, and then at that point, you're comparing Tyreek with Deebo and Ayuk, and I think Ayuk is just kind of regression bound. I think we got kind of a gift there with Daniel Jones falling to us to get our really, really, really gross Wan'Dale Robinson Daniel Jones stack in the 16th round. So I think in terms of that trade, I would side with a Kyler Tyreek just because I prefer Kyler over Mahomes, but I feel like that's a pretty even trade for both people. Pound, what's up, my guy? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. I think I saw you on PPR Tyler's 24-hour live stream. So by the way, for those of you watching, one of Lucas's buddies also does live streams where he goes through best ball drafts and stuff like that. He just did a 24-hour stream. You should go over to his channel. You can find him PPR Tyler. Or if you just Google Tyler Knable, I think that's how you say his name, Knaeble. You can also check out my guy, Fantasy Dog Pound's YouTube channel. He does live streams all the time. He's got great stuff over there too. Definitely go subscribe, go check out their pages. They do awesome stuff over there on their pages. Aaron, what's up? Good to see ya. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dusty, don't judge me. Am I crazy for taking Keon Coleman 104 in my rookie dress? As we are on the clock here, we are going to do, not a huge scroll down, but in the words of Pete Overzet, we're going to scroll the F down. We're going to grab Kobe Parkinson to keep going with that Rams Arizona Week 17 stack. Am I taking Keon Coleman at the 104 in my rookie draft? I have Allen, desperately needed a wide receiver. I don't think it's necessarily the craziest thing to do, but at the same time, I think there were probably some other receivers worth taking at the 104 over Keon Coleman in a rookie draft, but I do not. I get where you're coming from, so I'm not going to be too harsh on you for that one. Yeah, I was on there from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. to keep me company. Man, I don't think I could ever do a 24-hour live stream. I struggle to stay up for 12 hours in a day. I don't know how I could do it for 24. So that was mighty impressive. I was very impressed by that, to say the least. So as we are wrapping up here in this draft, last pick, Justice Hill is a very popular one that's been coming up the board that I've been kind of on for a little while, just because what are the chances that Justice Hill stays involved? Maybe Derrick Henry gets hurt. There's some contingent upside there too. I mean, that's just kind of how I was seeing it. We may want to go one more wide receiver, to be completely honest, though, just because we are staring at Jamar, Waddle, Ridley, JSN, Polk, and Wandale. So maybe some more reinsurance just to be safe and to be sure. We could go with another Patriots rookie wide receiver. What are your thoughts on Roman Wilson? I don't mind Roman Wilson, the player. I do, for a rookie wide receiver, they're going into an Arthur Smith offense. I do just kind of have my general question marks about it, but not going to be, overly critical. And I don't think that's the worst thing to do. And actually, the last pick, we're going to go Darius Slayton here, just to continue with that Giants stack with Daniel Jones and Wandale Robinson, as this draft is quickly coming to a close. So once this draft ends, I will pull up the team again, and we will review the team, and you guys can give me a grade. I will give myself a grade as well. Dan said on Facebook, Treylon Burks with D-Hop out for a while. Yeah, there's something to that, but I also then wonder what happens when DeAndre Hopkins comes back. So let's see here. This was our draft just now. Let's take a look at this. Let me know what you guys think. So from the 104, we started with Jamar Chase. Didn't think we could really go wrong, with one of Jamar, Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. We could have gone running back. That's just not what I typically want to do with a top 5 pick, at least in these kind of drafts. Came back on the second round, found Jalen Waddle there. And then in the third round, we grabbed Kyron Williams, who's just got, for a third round pick with his kind of upside, it's probably one of my favorite picks in all of best ball drafts this year. We then grabbed Trey McBride in the fourth round to start the Arizona LA Rams kind of week 17 build and correlation. And we grabbed an elite tight end, which seems to kind of work out in favors in terms of just how well our teams end up becoming then at the end of it. And then after those 4 rounds, we went Calvin Ridley, JSN. So we've got 4 wide receivers at this point, and then we grab Connor for another Rams and Arizona stack in correlation. We then grabbed Jaden Daniels, not necessarily a guy that fits the build, fits the teams that we had drafted before or anything like that, but just getting a guy with rushing upside, just because the quarterbacks that we would be staring down then at that point were a Tua or a Geno Smith, Will Levis, and all of that. So grabbing Daniels there in the 8th, and then we grab Raheem Mostert, who, again, may not be the 1A as we saw him last year, may not have 18 touchdowns, but if he can give you 11 or 12 touchdowns, he is suddenly one of the best values for a guy that was going in the 9th round. I'm going 9th round, 9th round of drafts on Underdog. So at this point, we've got our quarterback, we've got our tight end, we've got 3 running backs, we've got 4 wide receivers. We grabbed Tua just to get the Miami, or to continue the Miami correlation, right, with Waddle and Mostert, and then Tua. Then we went wide receiver after that, just because we probably needed to invest in wide receiver at that point after not going receiver 4 picks in a row with 2 running backs and 2 quarterbacks. Build out the running back room a little bit more just because we did have Mostert and Kyron on the same bye week, and we got J.K. Dobbins. Not the highest week-to-week upside, but you know that he's going to get touches just based on everything that's been coming out of training camp with him and Gus Edwards likely going to be leading this backfield. And then Julian McLaughlin as just a little bit of a flyer with receiving upside, kind of big playability. Also, then we grabbed Wandale, Isaiah Likely, who's been getting some buzz out of training camp, that they will be utilizing him a little bit more in the offense just because they don't have really any of Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. And then we grabbed Daniel Jones to give ourselves a little, really crappy giant stack with Wandale Robinson, Daniel Jones. We scrolled the F down on Colby Parkinson and Darius Slayton, right? We got Slayton to continue the giant stack with Danny Dimes and Wandale, and then Colby to continue the Arizona and LA Rams week 17 correlation there. So give me your thoughts on this. I personally am probably going to give myself a B on this. There's not really one player that I get overly excited about besides like Kyron Williams. But I feel like this was pretty much just, a steady right down the middle of the fairway kind of draft where, we're taking best players available to us, guys that we believe will be able to give us, good upside week to week. We're not going too far into the correlations. We're not going too far into the stacks. But we have a nice little balance between, like I said, that week to week upside with then the builds and the correlations and stuff like that. Any players any players high potential in being traded midseason to a better scenario to get more targets, like a McCaffrey went to San Francisco a few years ago, potentially Ayuk to the Steelers. I think if there is a name to look out for, I'm no insider or anything like that, but I think if there's a guy that we could probably be on the lookout for, it might be an Amari Cooper. Just 1 year left on his deal. Cleveland trying to get out what they can. We could even see I'm trying to think, maybe are there any running backs that could be moved along? I don't really think so. Any tight ends? I don't really think so. So maybe I feel like the one that we can probably, at least to my, way too early, just looking at contracts and knowing contracts and stuff, I would say like Amari Cooper might be the biggest name that could potentially be thrown around during trade deadline time. Like maybe switches situations, finds himself, not to say that like Cleveland is a really bad situation for him right now. I think that's actually a very good situation for Amari Cooper, but maybe, this thing happens, that thing happens, and then Amari Cooper lands in this spot, and now he's just the benefactor of all those things happening. So, but yeah, back to this team, I give it a B. It's not, it's not the best team. But at the same time, there are very good players, guys that are, to my estimation, some values that, I believe will be outperforming their ADP and all that kind of stuff. So, all right, y'all. I think that'll do it for this live. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for joining and hanging out for a little while. Appreciate all your comments and questions and stuff. Now, make sure that you are subscribed to our shorts channel and our podcast channel, Fantasy Football Fellas. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you get podcasts. We are on there. Fantasy Football Fellas on YouTube. Again, Fantasy Football Fellas shorts, where you get our minute-long videos, and Fantasy Football Fellas, where you get our much more in-depth analysis and breakdowns in podcast form, where all three of us will be together, or try to be together at least. Sometimes it's just two of us, but we go much more in depth and much more analytical. We give you the stats and we give you the discussion that you miss out on in a minute-long video. You can follow us on Facebook, and we have a Facebook group over there that gets exclusive content over there as well. So you can join that for free. You can follow us on Twitter at It's at FF Fellas. The FF Fellas is over on Instagram, which you can also follow us there. We have a draft guide giveaway right now on our new YouTube channel. All you got to do is be subscribed, go to our most recent video and just comment something, your thoughts on a take that we had. Just tell us what's up. That's all you got to do to enter, and then we will pick a winner, and winner will be then contacted to then get you a free copy of the draft guide. Draft guide you can find at fellasdraftguide.com. If you want another free way to get that draft guide, all you got to do is use the promo code fellas on Underdog Fantasy. That is FELLAS on Underdog, and you will receive our draft guide for free. And I think for this week, we've got three episodes coming out on the podcast channel. We got a mock draft coming out soon. As we get closer and closer to the start of the regular season, as your draft gets closer and closer, make sure you're subscribed just for advice and the analysis that you may need when you are stuck between two players going into your drafts. Dan will ask a question on Facebook. Any scenario that you take back-to-back running backs, round one, round two? I think in home leagues, I don't, unless like I'm taking a Brees or a Bijan at the 105, and I'm then getting a Jahmyr Gibbs at the, on the come round in the second round. Like that's the only time that I'm going back-to-back running backs. I'm not going like Brees Hall, Devon Achane, Brees Hall, Kyron Williams, Brees Hall, Saquon Barkley. Like if I'm getting like a value on a guy that is projected based on ADP to go end of the first round, early in the second round, if that makes sense. So, all right, y'all. Again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining in. Hope to see you on our newest episode of the podcast that is dropping here shortly. So make sure you're subscribed over there, and we will see you later. Deuces.